Hey, this is Jesse with TextEngine. I want to go over integrating the feedback controller and the two methods of doing it into Unity Essentials Survival Shooter tutorial. What we're going to do is create a simple damage feedback controller that we're going to put over the heart in the bottom left-hand corner that's going to tell us the amount of damage we're losing every time we get hit. It's going to be a simple feedback controller that's just a rising one. We're going to add red text inside the heart that's going to appear every time we get hit when the player gets damaged, and that's it. So we've integrated it inside the player script that manages the player, and anytime the player gets hit, you'll see that the feedback controller is called. So in this video tutorial, we're going to go over the two methods to do that, which is the first one is making a reference to the feedback controller directly, and the second one is making a reference to the TextEngine manager so you can communicate with more than one feedback controller at the same time. So the first method I want to go over is directly referencing the feedback controller. If you're only going to have one feedback controller, then there's no reason why you shouldn't do it this way. Create a reference to the feedback controller inside your class or script that you're writing, and then somewhere in the awake method, use the find object of type in order to grab the actual feedback controller you want. Notice we're grabbing the GetFeedbackController method and then passing the object name of our feedback controller. And I literally mean the object name. So whatever the name of that specific feedback controller that you make, hopefully you customize it after you made it, just pass it along as a string in the awake method, or in the GetFeedbackController method that we pass in the awake block. And then finally, the last thing you want to do is just simply call the AddLine. So grab your reference to the feedback controller, pass AddLine, whatever information you want to have. In this case, we used the damage that the player is going to receive, and it's going to be popping up down there in the bottom left corner of the game. Now this is really good if you've only got one feedback controller, but what if you have more that you want to talk to? So we talked about using a reference to the feedback controller object in order to talk to a specific feedback controller in our script. But what if we have multiple feedback controllers that we want to talk to? Instead of having a whole bunch of different references to feedback controllers, what you can do is you can create a single reference to the TextEngine manager itself. This is a parent object of all the feedback controllers in screen space or overlay screen space that will allow you to use a method called GetFeedbackController and then pass the actual object name of the feedback controller you want to use in order to add a line to it. This is way easier than having public TextEngine feedback controller, controller 1, public TextEngine feedback controller, controller 2, or however many you want to do. This also lets you very quickly and easily scaffold new feedback controllers throughout the game without having to come back into your code and provide a lot more setup. What you can do is just add a single line of code. For this example, I've recreated the previous step 1, step 2, step 3 by just modifying this to have a reference to a TextEngine manager, and then in step 2 we instantiate that TextEngine manager by grabbing it from the scene, and then finally we call GetFeedbackController and pass the name of the feedback controller we want to use, and then we use the AddLine method. The name here, again, is just the object name of our feedback controller. So player damage feedback, that's just the name of this object, is just passed into GetFeedbackController. So the way this method sort of, I think, outperforms the other method is that if I wanted to create another feedback controller, I can just add another line right here referencing that feedback controller. I don't have to go and set another reference to a feedback controller or whatever. I just use the single TextEngine manager reference. So let's do that right now. Let's say I want to create another feedback controller that does the exact same thing. It just shows the damage, but it shows in the middle of the screen, maybe on the player a little bit. In the next update, I'm actually going to create a way to spawn text that's anchored onto a 3D object in your scene. But right now with version 1.1, it's just going to be a static overlay text that you can control, kind of like GUI text, or think kind of like Diablo. So for this one, let's create another feedback controller just to demonstrate what we can do here, and we're going to call this one on player damage feedback. And we're going to customize this a little bit. Just some random values so you know that the systems are different. We'll make that stay for a long time. We'll keep it as a rising, we'll make it a falling controller this time. So the text will appear and then fall. And then we're going to look at that new line prefab, and let's go ahead and get that on the screen. So I like to use dummy text here that I'm going to expect. So if I was going to get hit, maybe it's for 20, I want to see what that looks like when I get hit for 20. So I'm going to bring this bad boy on the screen by starting my X position about half of my canvas width and my Y position about half of my canvas height. That should get it up on the screen there, and then you can click and drag wherever you want it to go to sort of set that new line prefab. So in this case, I'm just going to kind of have it appear right about there, and I am going to make it fancy text. Why not? I'm just going to make it. Let's take a look at some of these other ones. I want to, no drop shadow, maybe a metallic green, and we'll kind of make it a little bit bigger. Sure, why not? And then also in 2 is you'll be able to, in 1.2, you'll be able to change the size of the text. So as it's decaying, you can make it, appear small and then fade large or something. That is a property of feedback controllers you'll be able to manipulate if you want to or not. And then there's one more thing I wanted to add. It's that custom hooks. Probably in 1.4, I'm going to be adding a custom hooking engine that you can write your own Text Mesh Pro alteration functions and then just hook them straight into the logic of your feedback controller. And it all happens behind the scenes, or you can just add a component to it, to the script that has a feedback controller or what have you. But in this case, we're just trying to demonstrate multiple feedback controllers. I'm going to take the name of the feedback controller itself, just so I don't type it wrong. And then I'm going to go back to my code. Again, we just created a new feedback controller, configured the new line of where I want it to start. Let me go ahead and get that out of there so it's not stuck on the screen. Now I'm going to go to my code. Now instead of creating another reference to the feedback controller, I've already got my engine manager reference set up. So I'm just going to go ahead and call that and then get feedback controller and pass the name of the object name of my feedback controller, and then just simply AddLine. And in this one, I'm just going to have it be the amount. So we'll go sad face plus the amount to string, same as before. So whereas we see the little red heart having the -10, -15 when I get hit, this one is just going to be a sad face and then the number. Or I could just be a sad face. Let's do that. That'll be fun. It'll just be a sad face when we get hit. So anytime the player gets hit, we'll see the sad face appear on the, about middle of the screen, falling down, and then we'll see the first feedback controller right here. And let's go. Let's see. So again, all I did was just added that line, and we are going to come up and get hit, and there it is. Sad face every time I got hit. Look at that. And we still have this feedback controller over here, firing away the player damage feedback, and here's the on-player feedback right there. Hey, thanks for watching this preview for the Text Engine version 1.1 changes coming to the Unity Asset Store. In this video, we went over the 3 of my favorite improvements: named controllers, the 2 ways in C# you can interact with your controllers, and the fact that now you can have as many feedback controllers as you want in your scenes. One thing I wanted to point out is that having named controllers is going to be really cool when we are wanting to deal with different types of controllers too. Like say you want to have a tooltip appear and have HUD text update at the same time. Anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, reach out to me by email if you have any questions or comments. Have a great day.